Hello, everybody. My name is David Cly, and I did my COOP on the Alaska Department of Natural Resources and Division of Forestry. And so the overview for my COOP for the Division of Forestry, um, what is the Department of Natural Resources? And the Department of Natural Resources manages all state-owned land, water, and natural resources such as lumber and land, and it manages everything except for fish and game. And when all land conveyances from the federal government are completed, the people of the state will own land and resources on 104 million acres, which approximately 100 million acres have been conveyed so far. And the state owns approximately 60 million acres of tidelands, shorelands, and submerged lands, and manages 40,000 miles of coastline. The state also owns the freshwater resources of the state, a resource that equals about 40% of the entire nation's freshwater flow. So there are 7 divisions under the Department of Natural Resources, include the Division of Agriculture, the Division of Forestry, Geological and Geophysical Surveys, Mining, the Division of Land and Water, Oil and Gas, Parks and Outdoor Recreation, and Support Services. Specifically, we're going to be talking about the Division of Forestry. And the Division of Forestry manages forest for multiple uses and the sustained yield of renewable resources on over 20 million acres of state land. The division provides fire protection services and related fire and aviation management activities on 150 million acres of land throughout Alaska. The Division of Forestry also dictates when fire danger is high and when the community can have fires and when they are strictly prohibited. The division has bases in Delta, Fairbanks, Matsu, Anchorage, Kenai, Kodiak, Southeast Alaska, Southwest Alaska, Tok, and Valdez, with headquarters of the Division of Forestry located in Anchorage. So the first section of my COOP is the executive summary, and for this I just included the main mission statement and the summary of what the Division of Forestry does, which provides and is responsible for maintaining over 98 million acres of land throughout Alaska. I identified the threats that these lands face, which include tsunamis, earthquakes, pollution, and specifically the biggest threat to the area under the Alaska Department of Natural Resources is wildfires. Approximately over 1 million acres of land are lost each year due to wildfires in Alaska. This number is just predicted to rise within the coming years, and with an average of 70,000 lightning strikes in the state per year, the fuel types in Alaska will remain highly flammable, and the initial spread of fires will become more and more active. Also in my COP, I identified roles and essential roles and how these roles are replaced by a successor or someone else in training. The purpose of the COP, the Continuity of Operations Plan, is to identify critical functions, systems. It describes how to communicate with stakeholders, the succession of key roles of forestry, which I mentioned. It offers resource requirements, recovery objectives, vital records, processes involved in relocation, training plans, and lastly, revision methods for the Continuity of Operations Plan. The scope, So time-sensitive functions of the Division of Forestry. In the event of a fire, the Division of Forestry is responsible for providing a production-oriented fire management service to its stakeholders. And this COOP is relevant to the Division of Forestry because it identifies critical functions to continue operations in order to maintain its administration of the owned 98 million acres. Um, Essential functions include the protection of lives and property in the state of Alaska, and priority is given to areas in the state which have residents, and the cessation of priority is given to land that has buildings located on it. In the operations section of my COOP, um, identified that the Alaska Division of Forestry is responsible for so much more than just fire response, which is something I learned while doing this. I identified the maintenance of forests all around the state and how operationally essential clearing brush away from structures and power lines are. Um, Identifying resources. I included all resources of responding to fires in Alaska, and this includes the 7 permanent fire crews and the 35 emergency firefighter crews that are formed in the event of critical fire weather around the state. Also, aircraft are considered in the state, and the Division of Forestry relies heavily on aircraft to be successful, as there is little to no road access in much of the state, with only aircraft accessible areas. How I obtained my information. So this is my place of employment, which gives me an upper hand when I was trying to gain information on the COOP, as I have already made contact with many of the individuals in charge of identifying and implementing emergency procedures. And on top of that, since this is a publicly funded department, all of the information regarding emergency procedures is documented and displayed for the public to overview. I use the current COOP also to fine tune the one I turned in and created. And I was also lucky enough to get to speak with my supervisor about the operational activities that are involved in the current COOP. Some challenges I faced was obtaining information. As I was trying to get in contact with the people in charge of the continuity plans for the Division of Forestry, I didn't know who to contact or where to start. And by the time I was doing research, the Division of Forestry was minimally staffed, as it was the off season and I wasn't able to contact anyone until April 1st. Also, I was able to identify the assumptions I made, pulling from my previous knowledge and assuming that the way I understood things was it was in fact a lot different than the actual plans. This became an issue as I was creating my COOP and typing out operations that I had knowledge of already, and the considerations I pulled were only surface level. Communication and outreach is another huge challenge that I faced when building my COOP, and its big challenge of the Division of Forestry as well as what I had was, since many Alaskans live in extremely rural areas with no internet connection, news, or social factors, how are you able to communicate with those people that it's unsafe to burn? And I actually asked this question to my supervisor, and the DOF doesn't have a clear answer on this one yet, but they post signs in heavily trafficked areas that indicate the current burn programs and procedures. Things I would do differently. Organization. I would have spent more time creating a more clear and organized continuity of operations plan, as mine was hard to navigate, as I just sort of listed the main points for each necessary activity involved in a typical COOP, neglecting the fact that every COOP needs to be different based on organizational needs and factors. Also, obtaining information. I didn't take into account the time of year I was doing research on my COOP, and how I would not be able to contact anyone until the Division of Forestry picked up in the spring. But luckily, I was able to contact the necessary people and obtain the information I needed in time to complete this, or to complete my COOP. Um, Something I learned that I would like to change, operationally for the Division of Forestry is have a more strict fire prevention program. I work for this organization and for this division, and it's extremely frustrating learning about the functions and operational activities of the Division of Forestry and its relation to fire prevention because it's stated that you're not allowed to have any fire activity in the event of a burn ban, and you could be prosecuted and fined if you were caught. But just because the rules state that, it doesn't mean they are enforced. This year to date, there have been over 120 fires as of May 27th, and 0 tickets have been written to any of the man-made fires. There's been over 11,000 acres burned in Alaska to this date this year, and there hasn't been any sort of punishment for those people yet. I would change the punishments for having fires and make them more strict. Um, and thank you for listening to my presentation. I hope you learned something. And thank you.